Hello, Northwestern History community. I'm Robin Bates. I'm here with Jonathan Z. Brack, who joined the faculty as an assistant professor this past fall quarter 2023. The deeply erudite Professor Brack is an expert on the history of medieval and early modern Iran and the Mongol Empire, and most particularly on religious exchanges, conversion, and comparative empires. His first book, An Afterlife for the Khan, Muslims, Buddhists, and Sacred Kingship in Mongol Iran and Eurasia, appeared last year with the University of California Press. Thank you for joining us today, Yoni.
Thank you so much, Robin. Thank you for having me.
So, as a way of just introducing you to all the alumni and everyone out there, what was your path to becoming a historian? Did you always know that this was the path for you, or did you sort of stumble into it? How did that work out?
So I think I kind of stumbled into it a little bit. I always tell my students when I kind of initially took history in high school, I sort of hated it a little bit. Was not a fan. It was a lot of like memorizing dates, right? It seems very schematic. And initially, when I came to university, I wanted to study modern Middle Eastern history, so like Middle East more, and the kind of contemporary politics. And they offered a fellowship in the School of History for students, and I fellowship with a good funding. So I submitted application, I got in, and initially it was like sort of an outsider, and I grew into it very much. What helped a lot was in my second year as an undergraduate student, I took a course in the Silk Roads. Which ended up being sort of a major passion for me. The course was fantastic. We talk a lot about the Mongols in the course, of course, the Mongol Empire, which became really exciting. I ended up writing a paper based on Arabic biographical dictionaries. I kind of studied Arabic beforehand a little bit, looking at the life of Mongol women, elite Mongol women in Iran at the time. And that kind of really was exciting to read about the Mongols in Arabic sources and kind of combining that with my studies at the School of History. The special program for undergraduate students actually kind of brought me to where I am today.
Wow. And then I know that you are someone who's really interested in the history of religion,
Mhm.
and in particular on sort of early modern. And one thing that's really interested me in your work are these Mongol courtly rituals of comparative religious efficacy, where a Mongol ruler will have a Buddhist and a Christian and a Muslim theologian, all of whom are trying to kind of convince the Khan that their way is the best way. And people have studied these before. They've talked about the Khans as perhaps convinced religious pluralists, or
Mhm.
maybe just as pragmatists who are trying to play different religious schools off of each other and trying to make sure no one gets too strong. And I know you don't necessarily disagree with any of this, but you have your own way of framing what's going
Mhm.
on in terms of the Mongols' own religious beliefs, including that the mandate from heaven that they believe came to Genghis Khan, and how different transcendentalist religions can best fit into that. Could you say more about these rituals, how you've researched them, what you think they tell us about what religion is, especially for those of us who have sort of a Judeo-Christian monotheist conception of what a religion must be?
Sure. So I think the way I got into it was reading a lot I was looking for interaction between Buddhism and Islam in the Mongol Empire, specifically in medieval Iran. And we have this kind of moment where we have Buddhism coming into Iran, an influx of Buddhist monks, along with the Mongol rulers who conquer the Eastern Islamic world, which includes Iran, Iraq, Azerbaijan, some of Anatolia as well. And they kind of established monasteries and temples. And the Mongols are very much kind of happy with these Buddhist elements, but the Muslims, of course, are not very happy with them. This was predominantly a Muslim area beforehand, right? We still have a predominantly Muslim population. And I initially kind of was looking at, we have in this period, we have sort of expansion of the knowledge of Muslims on Buddhist and the Buddha dogma. One really important work is this chapter on India, which includes a really kind of the most informed account on Buddhist theology, Buddhist dogma, Buddhist traditions in the Islamic world during this period at the Mongol court in Iran, written in Persian, and then translated into Arabic. But what I found is that the same author who kind of incorporated all this knowledge in Buddhism was also engaged in disputations at the court with Buddhist monks, and especially against kind of the belief in reincarnation. So he wrote a number of kind of really important refutations of reincarnation. And there, what I found, which was really kind of intriguing, was not just that he sort of is charting, disputing the very kind of foundation of the idea of reincarnation, versus the kind of resurrection. I know it sounds a bit kind of very theological and sort of up there, but it was really interesting to me how he sort of addressed the issue of kingship. So sort of he was finding a way, I think, to kind of market, which was very much something very much the Mongols were super interested in, and kind of understanding how to different religions can offer the Mongols translation of their own conceptions of kingship as divinized, sacred, how they can support their claims, for example, especially if you're a successor to the Khan, you want to kind of support your claim to the throne through these different religions. So I was looking at how these refutations are basically sort of looking at translating ideas of kingship into the afterlife, and realizing there was not just a competition over at court over like disputing each other. There were actually there's a third party here, a presiding Khan, right, who's like judging the event, of course, deciding who's right or wrong. But it's also about marketing their ideas to the Khan by giving them a very strong sort of Mongol package. So presenting, for example, a very effective, appealing afterlife to the Khans, for example. These are the things that will happen there, right? This is why you, the ruler, will get an exceptional afterlife, for example, which is a claim that I see happening in these refutations often. Or the Buddhists doing the same thing. We have letters to the Khans themselves that talk about the exceptional reincarnation the Khans are going to definitely go through. So these ideas sort of showing how this kind of market of religions was not just about proving who's wrong or who's right, but actually showing how you can market your ideas to the Khans in a very kind of in a program that appeals to their own kind of mode of religiosity, which I call immanentis. You mentioned transcendentalist. It means a lot for this is a course, a whole course on its own. Yeah, pretty much.
And one more question in question, although a very not necessarily literate, doesn't come from a textual-based tradition, is dealing with people who are quite conventionally learned and sage. How does the Han maintain their upper hand in the discussion?
So often the Khan was always right first, he's never wrong. He is the most rational individual at the court. My kind of sources talk about the rationality of the rulers. They're always right. They're never wrong, right? He has his own kind of super mundane knowledge, which is interesting. He sort of knows all religion. We see this coming through different ideas. We see this also in Christian missionaries traveling to the court in Karakorum, for example, William of Rubruck, the famous missionary. We have this discussion at court, and sort of the Khan says, we understand all religions lead to, are the same path leading to God, or, sort of this kind of same notion of God. We chose the most effective path. If you're effective, kind of, we'll take you on as well and add you to our kind of, company of different religious experts. But that's the question if their Christians are effective or not. So I think sort of they're engaging with, they're presenting themselves as knowable, as knowledgeable in all traditions. And that's sort of something that you have to cater to if you want to compete at this court. So if any of you kind of by chance, do some time traveling and find yourself in a Mongol court, know that you have to cater to certain conceptions, right, of the rulers. Yeah.
So really very fascinating. I know that your research is taking a related but new direction that's comparing science and religion and their relationship in kind of Mongol era Eurasia. Can you tell us a little bit about that project and how your research has been progressing?
Sure. So I can even show a picture.
Oh, please do.
Project. Yeah. So this image is from a manuscript I've been working on a little bit. So this project is called Logic of Empire. It's a new book project. I'm trying to think about religion and science in the Mongol Empire. And what we see in the Mongol Empire is this kind of moment of exchange, transfusion, exchange of ideas, of knowledge, of items, of people, experts, all across Eurasia, from Iran to the Eastern Islamic world, from Europe as well, all the way to China and back and forth. We know Islamic astronomy is reaching China. We know Chinese sciences and Chinese medicine is reaching Iran, for example, under the Mongol rulers there. And this is an example. This is the earliest translation we have of Chinese medical knowledge into an Islamic language, in this case into Persian. This is the first kind of moment we have it. It is one manuscript. There's only one manuscript of this. The manuscript itself is produced in 1313. So it's really in the Mongol court in Iran, probably in the city of Tabriz in Iran. And what we have here is a translation of a number of different works on Chinese medicine, mostly dealing with the pulse and with, mostly with the pulse theory, which the Mongols were very keen about, this idea that you can measure or assess the medical condition of an individual just based on the pulse. And what's interesting about this translation, first, it has been rarely studied. There's a few studies in it which are really important. One is these diagrams, these beautiful diagrams, which we think currently that are not actually in use, or sort of they're a way of mimicking and giving authority to the text. Here's a few other examples, which are really kind of mimicking Chinese print block images. Even the lines around are very much not something you would find in Islamic manuscripts at the time, which did not have printing technology, which is important as well. And the person who sort of probably was responsible for orchestrating this translation project, an individual called Rashid al-Din, who was a Jewish convert to Islam, and actually a physician himself. He from a family of Jewish physicians who served the court. He was really important. He wrote a long introduction to this text. He praises China. It's sort of a work I've been working on for a long time. He is sort of a defense of the idea of translation of knowledge, in a sense. That's how I read it. He looks at, talks about how he praises China, the Chinese culture, block printing technology. He talks about Chinese medicine, but that's a whole kind of different mess he actually does them. It's not clear how much he understood actually what he was reading. He seems to be kind of sort of placing his own conceptions and mindset on the text as well. And he even claims they were Chinese prophets, perhaps, which is really interesting claim. So he's trying to find different ways to incorporate Chinese medical knowledge into the Islamic world against people he claims are objecting to this idea. How far does it go? We're not sure, probably not too far. There's only one manuscript again, so that's an issue. But it's a really interesting experiment going on at the time about science and religion and the way they both kind of interact, right, with each other within this framework of a really trans-Eurasian empire. He speaks about you mentioned the ruler before, the Mongol king. So he speaks about the Mongol king, for example. He claims the Mongol king was the person responsible for this translation and issued this idea of translating Chinese knowledge in the Eastern Islamic world at the time. And he's the most brilliant figure, again, like sort of this, very catering to Mongol sensibilities, that you would say. So it's a really interesting kind of experiment in translation, in scientific exchange, in the logic and kind of sort of imperial rule, in the connection between medicine and religion, which I'm kind of looking into at the time currently, and I'm hoping to produce a book on this manuscript and other works which relate to this theme.
Oh, wow. This is just so fascinating. As we wrap up, I know that you've developed a lot of new courses for us. You're enriching our curriculum, taking us to new places, core courses like the Mongol Empire, but you've also had new, more thematic courses on nomads and world history and tricksters and charlatans. What's it been like to work with Northwestern students? What are your kind of experiences of like what's distinctive about being here?
Yeah, I think the Northwestern students are fantastic for us. They're very creative, very erudite. They're interested in multiple kind of everything. It's really kind of curious individuals, clever, I'm always impressed when I go into the classroom by the students. One of my favorite things is to bring images, like I just showed, to the classroom. I actually reread parts of the translation, the introduction that this individual wrote to this text, which I translated, and kind of think about this exchange of knowledge in the Mongol Empire. One of the things I started doing this year, just because sort of learning about the students, and it worked really well, and I think the students have loved as well, is have them search for images themselves on their own. So we curate an exhibition, a fake exhibition, for the Block Museum here at Northwestern. On the theme of cross-cultural exchange in the Mongol Empire, or on nomads, which is another course, and kind of specific figures. And I give them a few kind of, links to museums, but also tell them, students, you can search, on your own. In the internet, right? It's a fabulous machine. We get really kind of, and the idea is, of course, they have to write a rationale for this sort of exhibition. And I'm really struck by how creative and thoughtful the students are, and what kind of great text they're writing about, connecting to different images. Often they find things I've never seen before. I was really sort of, expanding my own knowledge of my own field via the students here. It's quite remarkable, actually, working with them.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Yoni, for joining us today. This has been wonderful. And I look forward to hearing more new things from Harris Hall, from you and all the other wonderful professors. Okay, thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much, Robin. Have a great day.
Bye now.